Hi, everybody, and welcome to the iRockNits podcast. My name is Corey Eichelberger, and I'm coming to you from the southwest corner of the Twin Cities, and today is Monday, June 8th. I'm going to start today with a little bit of talk, a little bit of learning, a little bit of sadness. This morning I spent time at the George Floyd Memorial down on 38th in Chicago in my city. I've spent 2 weeks sitting with what is going on in my community, what has been going on in my community, and we absolutely have a broken police department here. We have had for years. We have been hearing about some of the things that have been going on, and no one was fixing it. It really kind of It's just going to be a hard thing for me to talk about. This is my city. I love this city. About 2 blocks south of Stephen B., the yarn store, and so I had been there many times. It is 38 blocks south of downtown. So it is in South Minneapolis. It was not actually in the city, like in the heart of the city. And I just feel like I can't start a podcast today without kind of talking about it. I know that I am coming from this talk on racism and diversity and policing from a place of white privilege. I live in a white flight suburb. I have very few people of color in my small town. In the suburb next to me, there are very few people of color. South of me is a little more diverse, but we don't see it, so we can pretend it's not there. And I have been doing a lot of reading in the last 2 years, especially when my daughter went off to college. She came home with a lot of information and sharing books, and she chose to go to a very diverse university. It was 51% students of color at Grinnell College in a small town in the middle of Iowa, but that was by choice for her. She really wanted to be surrounded by people who were different than she was, people from all over the world. And so the conversation for us started then. And I am sure that in the past I've said something wrong. I will probably continue to say things incorrectly, and I expected that people will tell me, and that's okay. I have no problem with learning. You all know that. But I do know that there are a number of people of color who watch this podcast, and it would be really wrong of me to go about my day and not acknowledge their pain and their suffering. I have been watching videos and reading books, and I called my daughter and said, I need to go. So I took some video while I was down at the memorial, and that's where the tears are coming from, I think. It was somber and sad and respectful and kind, and I will share that here in the podcast, because many of you don't live here, but you should know what it looks like there. There is an interesting monument that has been built in the middle of the square. It is what I would assume is a metal sculpture of a fist coming up out of the center of the road. And ironically, while we were there was a gentleman who took a ladder and climbed up the pole of the corner street sign and put up a sign that said George Floyd Avenue. And I got some video of that. People were just silent as he renamed that street. And when he crawled down from his ladder, people applauded. It is 90 degrees and very windy in Minneapolis today, yet people were standing on that hot black pavement for long periods of time. paying their respects. But I would assume that there weren't nearly as many people there today as there were over the weekend. There were people giving out water bottles, and there were food donation centers and places to receive food. One gentleman was taking donations but giving away free flowers so that you could lay a flower down. And one part of the street had been painted or chalked with a list of names of many of the people who have died because of police violence. And so I got a video of that entire piece of that street, and I just tried to be very quiet in my video, just to kind of have it for a moment to remember that the emotion that it welled up in me, it was just really moving. We have a lot of changes to make in our city and worldwide, but I pledge to do my part. It just makes me feel so inadequate in perhaps what I have done in my past to be of help. The high school that I taught at was somewhat diverse. I was still a first-ring suburb of the Twin Cities, but there were students of color, and in the alternative program that I taught in, there were a number of students, and I learned probably more from those students than I taught them sometimes. But my shared life experiences that I have grown up, I went to a university that was mostly white. You're surrounded by people who look like you, and you don't have to look any further. I do plan to continue on with the podcast today. I had prepared quite a bit of information yesterday and didn't know what I was going to say or how I was going to say it today. I have met so many of you online, and you have been nothing but kind to me. And I also want to say that some of you were a part of the Ravelry kerfuffle that happened a year and a half ago, and watch my podcast. Some of you have police officers as husbands and sons and wives, and you watch my podcast. I would hope that I'm a welcoming place for all people, but that we can have tough and hard conversations, even if we disagree. My friend Stephen put up a post on Instagram a week and a half ago that was inappropriate and hurtful, and people let him know. And lots of people piled on and said, I will never buy yarn from you again, and I will never come into your store again. And I sat with that for a day, and then I reached out to Stephen, because the only way for us to make change going forward is to continue to talk to people who make mistakes and educate and share what we've learned. So Stephen had never shown me prior to this that he was a racist, that he was a person who did not include people of color. He moved in to the neighborhood at 36th in Chicago. And so I want to continue conversations with him, continue learn from what he said and what he did, how he responded, instead of shutting him down and turning my back. I want him to grow in this experience. I think that's what we should want, always want for one another, right? Is that we grow. So I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to put that video in up front, at the front of this podcast, where it belongs. And then we'll go about the business of learning and being in community with one another. I felt like I've built a community here, and I want to continue that. So I'll be right back.
Sen tiền đi mình buồn.
I'm just jumping back in here as I was editing. I needed to say that while I was doing the video at the memorial, I tried really hard not to video too many people for, privacy purposes, but the man that was kneeling down talking to the little girl was beside us for quite a while, and he was explaining to her why she was there and what it was about and who George Floyd was. And that's one of the times that I really lost it and remember the feeling that this little girl needed to be shown at 5 or 4, maybe, I don't know how old she was, about this and about what her life could be like. And when the children are present, and there were a lot of young people and young children there, it really provided a lot of emotional thought.
Today I'm wearing the Pea Shoot pullover, which is by Kathy Karen, and it was in Interweave magazine, I believe, and it's just ribbed all the way down and has this kind of garter stitch, short sleeved, and I made it as a summer top, but I can't recommend it in the yarn that I used. It was the yarn that was called for, and it was a merino wool and cotton blend, and it's Aran weight. And if I've learned one thing, because I've done this a couple of times, in order to get a sweater done quickly, I will say to myself, it's okay if you knit it on a big yarn and bigger needle. That doesn't work for a summer weight sweater. I would say it's kind of heavy, the fabric, it's a little wide and a little short. I went out and looked at some notes this morning that people had written about it, and there was a woman who said she would never have knit it with the Aran weight yarn, so she knit it with a DK because the gauge is DK, so it's knit at 22 stitches to 4 inches, and so to knit an Aran weight yarn on a size 8 needle, it's I wouldn't even call it dense, just heavy. So although I don't mind the sweater, I'm not a huge fan of this, the way the eyelets look, and I just don't know that I would recommend it. So I don't really plan to talk about it like as a featured sweater on the podcast. But it's the air conditioning's on in here, so it's not too bad. So Pea Shoot pullover. If you want to look it up and look at what other people's comments were on it, it might be just fine knit up in a lighter weight cotton. That's what I would have done it in 100% cotton, I think. I did forget to mention that this top has a drawstring right back here because it was very wide around the top. So I did my little trick of weaving it in and out, and then I have it cinched up pretty tight right now. I could certainly let it out by a little bit, but another possible reason that the heaviness of the sweater doesn't work is because it makes the neckline wider than I might have liked it. So let's do the books I've been reading. So I finished a book called The Gifted School, and these are, of course, audiobooks as usual. And I would have said that I didn't like it, but I think some of that comes from the fact that I didn't like what I saw in it, which is perhaps a little bit of myself. When you read a book and it kind of rings a little too true. I thought it was, I'll give you a brief synopsis here. Seen through the lens of 4 families who've been a part of one another's lives since their kids were born over a decade ago, the story reveals not only the lengths that some adults are willing to go to get ahead, but the effect on the group's children, siblings, relationships, marriages, and careers, as simmering resentments come to a boil and long-buried explosive secrets surface and detonate. So they open a magnet gifted school in Colorado, and they're testing kids to get in. And if you have ever pushed a little too hard, helped a little too much with homework, cheered a little too hard at a ball game, and caught yourself up later, which happened to me once at a soccer game. I got too emotionally charged and I was yelling too loudly, caring too much. This book will mirror some of your behaviors. It's easy to sit back and say, oh, these parents are really over the top. But I live in a competitive white suburb, and I have seen these behaviors from neighbors. As a teacher, I would sometimes see these behaviors. As a learning tool, I would say the story is well written, moves along quite quickly, pretty popular, had 4 stars out of 952 ratings. It came up in as a recommended book for me from someone, but I found it a little hard to watch. These 2 little girls one little girl kind of dominate and compete against another little girl, and they were friends. So I'm gonna get. I think you should all read it. And then someone should tell me what they thought, because it was a little eye-opening, a little scary, a little sad. And there is a situation in the book that deals with a young boy who lives on the other side of the tracks, who's trying to get into the gifted school, and his parents clean the home of the wealthy woman. So you've got that whole dynamic going on, right? So I think that was a really interesting part of the story for me. Yeah, sometimes literature is hard when it reflects back at you, right? And then the second book I'm reading is called There, There. It's got 2 feathers on the front. It's by Tommy Orange, and it's 8 hours in length, and I just finished it this morning. And it's really good. As we learn the reasons that each person is attending the big Oakland powwow, some generous, some fearful, some joyful, some violent, momentum builds toward a shocking yet inevitable conclusion that changes everything. So this is one of those books that you have a chapter about a person and then another chapter about that person. And then when they go back, sometimes when I'm a listener, it's hard for me to remember which person was which. So I would recommend that you go out and read a brief paragraph synopsis before you start, so that you know who the main characters are. So you can kind of get them in your head, because they list them, well, they did on here, Dean Oxendine, Jackie Redfeather, Opal Viola Victoria Bear Shield, her nephew Orville, they list them off. And then you could kind of get an idea in your head of who's who. And then they all go to this powwow. And this won 10 Best Books of the Year, winner of the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. It is a story of Native Americans in America, Indians who believe that they're Americans first, and that they're from Oakland, and then how they connect with their tribe and their background. It's very. If anyone's read this one, let me know. Let's talk about it in the podcast thread. Okay? So those are the 2 books. I just finished that one this morning. I apologize for the shaky camera if I have not edited it out. Cody came in and laid down between my feet and the camera that's on the stool that's between the dining room table legs. And he's bumped it twice. So I've started over to try to take that out, but just in case you're getting wobbly, look away for a minute. He's sleeping now, so we should be okay. The podcast recommendations are Fiber Hustle with Aaron and Chip. I think I talked about them before, but I watched another one, so I wrote it down. Rusty Knits, which was new to me, and that's with Rusty and Hampton. So I love that we're getting some male viewpoints in knitting podcasts. I just think that's awesome. For a long time, there were really only a couple And now we've really broadened that, and I think that's amazing. And then Avid Knits with Sarah Houston, and I watched episode 26. So I don't know where Sarah has been all my podcast watching days because I had never watched her. So she's got 26 episodes out there. And then I watched Brownie Knits, who is Gina in Indiana, and she has been podcasting since October of 2014. I went back and watched her first one. And all I can say is, wow, that's awesome. And then I watched another one that's been out there for a while, the Faking Sanity podcast with Cindy and Angel. And they're in Dawson Creek, Canada. And they've been podcasting for 2 or 3 years. I think maybe they started out and then they weren't there for a while. I might be mixing that up with someone else. But anyway, so go give some of those podcasters a lesson. Someone just sent me a message about 3 more, so I'm going to watch those and then I'll talk about them next time. And I owe a couple people a response on Ravelry. Suzanne, I started typing a response for you the other day, and apparently I didn't send it because I forgot to hit send or something, because I went back into the thread today to close it and draw for the giveaways, and it was blank. So I owe you a response, and someone else asked me a question about yarn bases, so I will answer those next time. Just know that I didn't intentionally miss them. I think I got distracted. Something happened and I got called out of the office, or I started making supper or something, and I just didn't go back in and complete it. Okay. I have a recipe to share this week. This is the California Pizza Kitchen chopped salad. And we used to go to the California Pizza Kitchen. If you're from the Minneapolis area, it was in Maple Grove, so it was quite a trek, but we would meet some friends from up north there, have pizza and this salad. And it is just so good and different that I thought it would be a good one to share because it's starting to get hot now. So the dressing has garlic and Dijon mustard and oregano and black pepper and salt and vinegar and olive oil, Parmesan cheese. So it's herby. So you can always leave out some of the herbs. And then the salad itself has iceberg and romaine lettuce chopped into wide strips, and then basil, mozzarella cheese, garbanzo beans, tomatoes, turkey breast, salami, and scallions. So you chop all of that, and then you mix everything all together and pour the dressing over. And I would recommend cutting up the garbanzo beans. Sometimes they have that kind of outer skin on them, and so sometimes I'll rinse that away. But if everything's chopped a little more finely, it's a little easier to eat, I find. This makes a huge bowl, a big salad bowl of salad. So you can either divide the recipe in half or make it all and then only dress half the salad and eat it twice. So, it won't get soggy if you don't put the dressing on it. So cut it in half, put it in your fridge. The lettuce will get a little wilted if you chop it, but you could also just chop all the ingredients and leave the lettuces not chopped. So I will link this in the Ravelry group that says Recipe of the Week for you to just go in and copy and paste it. I wish I had made it tonight or today or yesterday so that I could show you what it looks like. I don't even have a picture, but I can picture it so clearly in my head. It's a big tossed salad and absolutely delicious. So you might want to try that. So, let's do the shawl of the week, shall we? This is really more of a poncho. This is called Nordic Lights, and it's by Pam Allen, and it's Fair Isle worsted weight, 20.5 stitches to the inch. It's charted. It was in the book Wrap Style, Innovative to Traditional, 24 Inspirational Shawls, Ponchos, Capelets to Knit and Crochet. So it's a little book that I had, but I think it originally came out in like Knit Scene, or it was re-released in Knit Scene. I'm not really sure about that, but that I remember seeing it in a magazine as well. The interesting part about this is that it's knit bottom up instead of top down. And then when you get up around the shoulders, you break and kind of seam together the shoulders. And how many people? 78 people made this project. And I went out and was looking back to see what comments people had made about it. And what I found was most people said it's too small. And I would agree. It came in one size, a size 44, and that's the circumference at the lower edge. But a lot of people's circumference at their shoulders is wider than what their circumference at the lower edge is. So, and I'm not sure if I was one of those people or not that thought 44, well, I can knit a 44-inch bust. But I go out after, my bust is wider than that. There was just some, to only have one size for one thing was a bit of an issue. And then you knit a size 7, a size 8, and a size 7, a size 6, and a size 8 knitting needle in this. And I really enjoyed knitting it. And it was a lot of people's first Fair Isle that they ever knit. However, it was too small. So when I put it on my shoulders, I always felt like I had to stand with my hands in, or if I moved my hands out, it would go piddaloo and kind of flip up. And so it was kind of unwearable. This came out in 2005. I knit it a couple of years later. And so I was never wearing it. And so I fixed it. This is how I chose to fix the Nordic Lights. Okay, it doesn't fit. My mannequin is broad shouldered. I should probably put it on this one, but you get the idea. I steeked it down the middle and I put a little clasp at the top. So now you would wear it as a little jacket over, kind of, and just leave the bottom open. Now this would come closed a little bit closer on me because the mannequin is just a little bit wider than I am. Remember, this is my male mannequin, so it's broad-shouldered with no bust. Maybe this was the better way to show it. There. And then here is that interesting shoulder construction where it's just seamed together when you get up to here. So if you have never knit color work, I think this would work really well on a bigger size needle. There were a couple of people who cast on extra stitches, so you could look at those notes and just cast on a few more stitches and make it fit a little bit better. I just thought that the steeking kind of fixed it for me. I wear it over like something if we're going out to eat and I'm afraid I'm going to be a little cold. I'll just roll it up and put it in my bag and carry it out because it's, it's a little piece. It doesn't take much room, kind of a thing. But I didn't even have the same color of yarn. And I don't think most of you noticed that when I held it up the first time. I just had a brown cascade, and so I just went with that. So that's the Nordic Lights capelet wrap shawl. Okay, are you ready to really learn about a disaster with me today? This one was a real lesson. This is the red-orange checkerboard cardigan, for lack of a better name. It was originally published in Taki Winter Classics, and this is it here. So it's kind of a jacket. Well, it is a jacket. It's a sweater made to look like a jacket.
heavy yarn, dense fabric, almost Chanel-like with a little collar and set-in sleeves. I knit it in a different yarn. So I used a ribbon, kind of a ribbon yarn. I knit this many years ago, but I've kept it all these years, although I have worn it, but it's kind of unwearable because of a couple of issues. So number one, I ran out of yarn. I did not have enough of the orange and the red to complete the sleeves in a checkerboard. So I striped them. I thought, well, because you needed twice as much yarn as you thought you would need in order to checkerboard the entire thing. I can't find this jacket on Ravelry. I can't find it on the Tahki website. I've looked everywhere for it. So I would say that when Tahki became Tahki Stacy Charles, and then Tahki Stacy Charles was recently sold, or they sold the yarn store, Stacy Charles. I think I've told you all that story about meeting Stacy Charles in New York City on the street corner across from his yarn store. Okay, I think so. But I think the pattern was kind of discontinued, but you could probably still find the book out online. Well, I did see it out online several places, but the jacket is a great jacket. The yarn that it called for was the Tahki yarn in Cottage, which was like a woolly tweed, and I was using a heavyweight tape yarn. And so I had the problem with the sleeves, and I found these wonderful buttons, and I wore it a couple of times, and then I washed it. And when I washed it, all of the sizing came out of the tape, and it became a limp rag. So as I think you're going to be able to see like how drapey this became, even though I knit it at a structured gauge and I had the right, technique to have it become like a jacket that was kind of cropped and short. I had no idea that there was sizing on that ribbon. Now, sizing is a treatment that they do. Some of you will have purchased items before where you wash it and then the fabric completely changes and you're like, wow, so it is a treatment that is used. It often is used like what I think of it as like a spray starch, right? They put it on and it kind of stiffens everything up a little bit. And the way that I would have known is if I had done a swatch and washed my swatch. And I'm guessing, because now this was many years ago, that I probably, if I made a swatch, which I probably did, I wasn't smart at the time to wash it and see how much the fabric changed in the washing. So all this knitting, all these gorgeous, gorgeous buttons, had a jacket that I really would have worn a lot. I really liked it. I thought it was really funky with the striped sleeves. And now I can put it on, and if I adjust this, the shoulders up and I roll the sleeves up, I can kind of wear it like a sloppy coat, a sloppy sweater, but it is far from the original design that it was intended to be. So I don't think everyone realizes that yarn can come with a coating on it, and we've been talking about superwash wool, the way it is treated, and the more you wash it, some of that treatment can come off of superwash wool. There are lots of articles out online. I've linked to a couple previously for you to learn more about that. But the best thing you can do is, even if you think you're knitting a gauge swatch that's smaller than the gauge swatch they recommend, if you're washing it, that's helping you get more information about the thing that you're going to knit.
I don't think I have much more else to say about that today, other than that I really wish it would still be the jacket that it was when I first knit it. And I'll probably at some point in time dig that Taki book out of my box of books. My pamphlet type books I keep in a kind of a Sterilite box in the closet, and maybe reknit it in a wool so that I would have that kind of jacket. I loved the colors together, of course. So of course I did, right? That was in 2006. And now I have the glasses to match. So anyway. Okay, I have a couple of special notes today. I was going through the giveaway thread where people were talking about what they're going to do this summer and what they're going to knit on. And then I was looking also at some of the other comments and things. And I came across that little pattern by Susan B. Anderson that is the little red long johns hanging on a string. Someone had knit up that, and it's called the Dingle Kringle Long Johns by Susan B. Anderson. It is so cute. If you don't have anything to knit right now and you need a palette cleanser, like you just finished a big project and you don't know what to start, or you've got some whips but they're not, cast those on. I just think that is the cutest little pattern. It would be great for Christmas presents, on a Christmas package, on your tree, hanging by your fireplace or over your kitchen window. It's just such a cute little pattern. And then will everyone put their hands together and give a big round of applause to Anissa, who volunteered weeks ago to watch all the podcasts and then make a list for me. And she has notated every podcast for all the tips and tricks that I've ever talked about and the timestamps for when they occurred. It is a work of art. I couldn't believe it when she sent it to me and she got it all done. I have thanked her profusely, but she has done, there's a thread on Ravelry that is Corey Stories. So if you were telling a friend, oh, Corey talked about this in her stories and you couldn't remember what episode or whatever, you could go back and look, and they're listed by episode and then what I talked about. And then there's another thread that is the tips and tricks that I talked about on that podcast. And she went into like a lot of detail. If I talked about it not in the tips and tricks section and it was later, she still notated it. It's awesome. So I'm going to really try to keep that up to date from here on out myself and try to kind of keep it going. I don't know if I'll be good enough to do all the timestamps from here on out. But she has 2 small kids, and the fact that she sat and watched all the podcasts and redid all that for me was, I just think, awesome. And it will really help any of you who are trying to go back and say, Corey talked about that. I wish I could listen to what she had to say again, or how she said it, or what video she talked, recommended. That would all be out there for you. So 46 episodes of Corey talking. So let's thank her for that, shall we? Yes. Okay. Then we're going to do the tips and tricks of the day today. So I just ordered an order of bug spray from my favorite bug spray people. And so I'm going to tell you about it. I hate the smell of bug spray, don't like deep woods off and all that kind of thing. And when I walk at the dog park, half of the dog park that I walk at is in the woods. And it's kind of shady. And when certain parts of the summer, you'll get back there and it'll be very mosquito-y on certain days. Kind of depends how the wind is and that kind of thing. But I use Thistle Farms bug spray, and it smells like geraniums, and it comes in a little kind of a bottle like this but clear spray. And I really like that I don't have to get it on my hands when I walk, because then if I'm sweating and I touch my eyes or whatever, I'm not lathering on, or using a stick or whatever and then working it in. So Thistle Farms is a company of that was started by a woman. Where's the second sheet? That was started by a woman who had been in an abusive relationship, and she wanted to help other women who had been trafficked or were prostitutes get out of that. So this is what it says. Natural bug spray, naturally made by women survivors of trafficking, prostitution, and addiction, with essential oils harvested by survivors of the Rwandan genocide. I just don't think you could pick a better company to give some dollars to, right? And they called Thistle Farms because thistles grow on the streets and the alleys where the women of Thistle Farms have walked. Considered weeds by many, thistles have a deep root that can shoot through concrete and survive drought. The resilience, vibrancy, and healing qualities of the thistle parallel the survival and flourishing of women survivors. So go out and look at their website, thistlefarms.com. Look at their board of directors. There are people of color there. Look at their women who have succeeded there. They have a house that women can live in for 2 years rent-free while they're getting their lives together, going back to school, getting jobs with their children, all of those things. I just think it's a great place to spend a few dollars, especially if you're looking for body lotions, wash, shampoo, candles and spray scents, essential oils, and then they also have gifts, jewelry, tea, coffee, and mugs, textiles and decor, apparel, bags and wallets, books and journals, all kinds of things that have kind of beautiful sayings on the front of the t-shirts. That empower women, and so I would just highly recommend my little bottle of Thistle Farms bug spray. I buy a bottle every year, and I always have some left over, but I don't know about the efficacy of it after it's, ridden in my hot car for an entire summer, and then I have a little pouch that I carry with my phone and my keys in it. And so it sits in there, and I always just get a new one. But they have different sizes, like 2 ounces and 4 ounces, and I buy the bigger bottle for $15, and it lasts me the whole summer. I spray like the back of my head and down my back and down the backs of my legs, so that when I'm walking, it's behind me and I don't get it in my mouth or something like that. But it works just great for me. So tip number 1. Thistle Farms. Tip number 2, I was out looking at, I'm writing some patterns right now for the ebook that I have coming out at the end of August, and I was out looking at some videos. I was linking some videos for how to do things in the patterns that I'm actually writing, and I came across a video that I watched the whole thing on and had nothing to do with my sweater. It's called How to Make a Sloper by Suzanne Bryan, a foundation pattern upon which clothing designs are based. She walks through how to make a sweater that will fit you by making a fabric item first, and she has a young woman with her there who's making her first one, and they just cut it out of kind of knitwear material, and they measure for the waist and how far down. If you want to do waist shaping, where it should happen on you, and then they put it on her, and then they say, she thinks it could be in, so she's going to do a couple of darts in the back, but not do the darts in the front if you have a tummy, and then the shoulders, she thought, I'm not a seamstress. So those of you that are know how to do this. I'm sure you've made a sloper. You knew what a sloper was. I never had even heard of that before. I mean, I always say to people, find something that fits you well and lay it on your bed and lay it out flat. And then as you're knitting your item, lay your item on it. And if all of a sudden your item is way bigger than the thing that's laying on the bed, you got to fix that. Or if vice versa, if the piece that you're making is smaller than the thing that you're making on the bed, you can fix it in the moment. If your sleeves and all that kind of stuff. So This is like making one to fit you first, not picking something you already had. So I'll link that in the show notes this week, but you could go to YouTube and look up how to make a sloper, and it'll come up, because I think she's the only one that called it that, by Suzanne Bryan, Bryan. I'll put it on the screen. Okay? My last tip or trick is something that I think most people know about, and I'm finding out that people don't know about these. This is a microwave bowl holder. And if you've never seen one before, it is for when you are microwaving your leftover anything, and then you have to lift the bowl out. And you can just pick it up by the tabs of the bowl. So I got mine years ago. It has been washed many times. And I was using it, and I had someone at the house, and they had never seen one before. And I said, really? I've seen these for years. Some of you that are seamstresses, sewers, sewists, whatever. Sorry, Amber. We had a discussion about which word is correct. You can make one, right? It's thick. Mine's quilted. It's lined. You can put any kind of fabric on it, that you like, but you can get them on Etsy, and you just type in microwave bowl. That's what I wrote down, right? Microwave bowl on Etsy, and they come up. So you can get them for $5, 2 for $8. You could get, so I bought them for my brothers 2 years ago at Christmas. I went to a craft sale, and they both have 3 kids and 4 kids. So I was like, if you got kids at home and you're microwaving stuff, you need this. And so I gave them to them, and then my brother put in an order for one for everyone in the family. Like, he said, I don't want to have one that we're all fighting over who, So he asked if I would tell him where I got the rest of them, and he got a bunch more. And then the other day, I think I was talking, I don't know, someone hadn't heard of it, and I thought, well, I'll just show it on the podcast, because it just makes my life so much easier. I mean, yes, can you take a pot holder and get your thing out? But this is like stable, sturdy. You don't have to squeeze the top of it with your pot holder like this and get the pot holder in the soup or macaroni and cheese or potato, whatever you're microwaving. Those are your tips and tricks this week. Let's do the hellos and the giveaways to kind of wrap things up here. Hello this week to people commented last time. So many of you commented about Western dressing. And I'm glad a lot of you are trying it. You've ordered it. You've tried it as taco salad. You've tried it as a marinade, and you're liking it, because I would have felt really bad if some of you would have been like, I spent money to order that, Corey, and it's terrible. So no one has told me they disliked it, so that's nice. And then also, many of you really liked the story I told about my mother-in-law and how she was named May. And then my mother-in-law called, because the gal that works at her nursing home watched the podcast and went in and told her, and I hadn't talked to May in a couple of days. I call her every few days, but I had not talked to her, so I hadn't told her. I mean, she was well aware of the story, but she called me to say, I heard you talked about me on that television show you do, she said. She's 90. YouTube is not a thing in her life. So, hello to Kathy D, Chris Osborne. Hi, Chris, and keep me informed on that hi-ho shawl you're knitting. And Kathy Goodman, and Denise Norber, and Donna Bauman, Margaret Ann Provenza, Olivia Mankey, Covert Knits, who said thank you for watching her podcast and giving her a shout out on ours. Connie S., Laura Lenke, Edie Nicole, Knit Takes Two Michelle, Donna Coffey, and Rachel Weisenstein. Janet Robertson, 619-253, and I'm working on the question you asked in the comments last time about the bag. Hi to Kathy B. and Mary Case and Randy Barnes and Nikki Loeffler, and who talked to me about some math for doing math, and then she was surprised because I responded and I did the math for her. I showed her how to do the math and she was like, oh, I can't believe you did the math. So no problem, like I have it down now, so I can usually get it figured out for people. Pat Howes and Judy B. and Terry Monk and Liz Nava, Sharon Ayers, Jean Claver, Donna Walters, Susan Westfall, Karen Tumblin, and Sandra Boyle. World Peas 00 Knits, Glory, Evelyn Burt, Melinda Zaccardi Rousseau, Penny Laughlin, Debbie McKinsey, Cheryl Lacemaker. Charlene Taylor, thank you, gave it a little thank you. Heather Wilson, Suzanne Reardon, who played the organ when she was younger, and I had a little boy who lived up the street from me, and he played the organ, and we would go bike riding, and we could hear him in the house playing. He was my first kiss when I was younger. I gotta think of his name. Oh, it'll come to me as soon as the podcast is over. But she played Baby Elephant Walk on her organ. Stephanie Haberman, Tina Kircher, HBWT 40, which I'd really like to know what that stands for or what your first name is. So give me a little, tell me who you are. Peggy Bork, who asked about the pins and said she couldn't find the pins on Etsy. And those are the iRock Knits enamel pins, which are right there. Etsy does not have the best search engine. And so you have to put in iRock Knits. And as you put it in the search bar, what will drop down below you will say stores containing iRock Knits, and that'll take you right to it. But if you click iRock Knits, you'll get a lot of things that are kind of related to words like iRock Knits, and it can be kind of hard to find the store. So when you type in IROCKNITS, then before you click on the little magnifying glass or the search, look at the drop down to find my store. And that's where it is. And there are still pins left. And I put the pens up if anybody's wanting to, ballpoint pens. Those are up, and all my patterns are out there. Carolyn Jans, Angela Jenkins, Jennifer Richards, James Johnson, Barbara Platts, Carrie Walden, Christine Carr, who talked to me about bananas that were green that got brown spots before they ever turned yellow, which was interesting. Cheryl Small, Beth Hoskins. And if you haven't, if you're on Ravelry and you haven't taken a look at the most recent front page of Ravelry, Ravelry sold more patterns in May than their projected budget. And so they put up a matching donation, and Ravelry matched $13,000 in sales in May from people to go to Black Lives Matter and some of those places. I have done a number of donations in the last few weeks looking at sites where I can learn information but also help. And so the Lake Street is one of the areas that got really hard hit here from the rioters that came through, and we drove through that area today when we went over to the memorial, and so I wanted to make sure that I gave, because I really want them to rebuild that area. It was just a beautiful part of the city, uptown, just past the lakes, the chain of lakes that kind of Minneapolis is kind of known for, and yeah, so I just think if you don't look at the front page of Ravelry, you would never see that. I know I'm kind of moving right through today, but I talked for a bit at the beginning, and so I wanna get this in. Let's do the giveaways, shall we? I was so impressed by that thread of people. There were a couple hundred, I think, how many did I do the random.org? It was just this morning early, but I can't remember. So many of you are doing the Try Wizard tournament with the Crafty Toad podcast. I think that's awesome. And they did announce that they changed the date, the start date from June 1st to June 8th. So if you haven't watched in the last few days, because they're doing daily podcasts and they're real short, and so you might have missed that if you wanted to get involved in that, it's one project a month for June, July, and August. And there are, prizes and all kinds of stuff going on over there. And they've picked the project for each of the months, and it's either a 1 or 2 skein project, something that is easily finishable in 30 days, according to them. Okay? All right, so let's do the tote bags first. Remember, I've got 2 tote bags from our friendly viewer. I have a red sheep one. Well, they're both kind of similar in tone with IROC knits on it. And the first one goes to Erin Marks, and I know Erin, so hi Erin, congratulations. Erin was at the Darn It Anyway retreat this last winter. And tote bag number 2 goes to Andrea B. Creations, Long Island. So the second bag goes to Andrea in Long Island. And then the frames that, well, it's right up there. Can I tip it? Not make you. So the in case of emergency break glass frames, I have 2 of those that I will box up very well and ship out. The first one's going to Ash Pirate's mom, and she's number 69, and that's Dawn in Iowa. And I know Dawn. Dawn is signed up to be a test knitter for me. And then the second one, the frame goes to number 76, and that's 077 Tab Mom. And that is Susan from Kansas. So those are the 2 picture frames that they don't have the yarn in them, but they have the words on the frame. You have to wind up your own yarn balls. Plus that'll be more fun because then you'll use yarns that you're more aware of. All right, the cup, the plastic cup that says IROC Knits on it, goes to number 12, JT Firework Knitter. And that's Jennifer in Massachusetts. So Jennifer, send me your name and address as well. And then the pens, 2 pens for free are going out to number 49, D. Canoles, DCANOLES on Ravelry. And then the 5 Hi-Ho shawl patterns. And if you have already purchased the Hi-Ho shawl pattern, you can choose to gift it to a friend or someone else in your circle on Ravelry or whatever. So the first one is number 109, Hanging On by a Thread. Love that. Jenny in Alabama. The second pattern goes to number 43, Epiphany 4SB. And that one did not have any information on it. So go out and put your name or your state on your Ravelry profile, will you, so I can know who you are? Number 52, WKH25 gets a Hi-Ho shawl pattern, and that's Wendy in Gillette, Wyoming. Wyoming is one of our favorite places to vacation when we did dude ranches when Kylie was younger, before we bought our own horse. We love that area. Then the number 4 Hi-Ho shawl goes to Mim, and that's Mindy in Illinois. She was number 18. And the number 5 shawl goes to the 5th shawl. It's number 7, and it goes to Ma Gundy, and that is Judy in St. Alberta, Canada. So all of you, I will gift those to your Ravelry name in the next week, because you can watch the podcast and see that you won, and then just know that you'll be getting it from me. And then I have a pin, an IROC Knits pin, and that's going out to Rosie L. in West Des Moines, and I think I've met Rosie. And then the last one are 2 more pens, and that is going out to C. Fish 2816, and that is Chris in Wisconsin. So thank you all so much for telling me about your summer plans, what you're going to knit on, what you have planned to do, how you beat the heat in the summer with your knitting. That thread was very fun for me to read. I couldn't comment because I locked the thread so it would be easier for drawing, but I put a little love, clicked a little love on all of your replies so that you would know that I read it. I really do appreciate all of you commenting and sending me messages. You can always reach me at Corey@irockknits.com. That is my email. If you have just a comment to make about the podcast and you would like to do it in a more personal way, not quite so public on YouTube, then that's fine too. I find this community to be very open and empowering to me, very kind. I don't have a lot of people being rude or disrespectful, or people just haven't been bringing nastiness. Maybe that's because they know that I won't put up with that and I'll just call it out, right? Like, there's no room for that here. I hope that you all go read, go donate, go walk, go protest, put a sign in your window. We have to make a change. Those of you that are in the Minneapolis area, I highly recommend that you drive down to the memorial for George. It is a moving place right now. Thousands and thousands of cars drove by when Prince died. His studio was right out here by me for weeks at a time. And I think honoring what happened and what we all saw on the video needs to happen. So thank you all. Until next time, no green bananas, waddle on, keep it colorful. Love you all. Bye.